For a long time, I believed that success followed a single path that usually involved climbing a ladder and proving commitment by staying busy and available. That model works for so many people. It just stopped working for me. Hi, my name is MJ, and if you're new here, welcome to the Sustainable Freelancing. And if you've been watching some of my videos, welcome back. Now, this video is not about saying that freelancing is better than traditional employment. It is about explaining why freelancing made more sense for the kind of life and career I wanted to build. And if you're also in that stage of life, this might shed some light and offer some fresh perspectives. Freelancing became my primary career after years of testing and questioning what sustainability really meant to me. And that questioning became unavoidable at the height of the pandemic. I had to let go of my job during a time when stability felt so fragile for everyone. And around that period, I started coming across content about freelancing and online work. I did not see freelancing as reliable, and I was far from being a believer until I became one. I share more about the early stages and my humble beginnings in the video that you are seeing in your screen right now, which I will link in the description for easy access. If you want more context around how this transition naturally unfolded, that would be a good place to go next. In a traditional career, or what most people call a 9-to-5 job, structure is often presented as stability. And in many ways, that is true. There is a clear schedule, usually a defined role, and a predictable income, which can be incredibly grounding, especially at the start of your career. I spent nearly a decade working in corporate environments, and I'm genuinely grateful for that experience. Those years gave me not just structure, but also discipline and exposure to how organizations actually function. I worked with people who mentor me, challenged my thinking, and helped me grow both personally and professionally. I learned how to communicate in teams, navigate expectations, and take responsibility for outcomes beyond my role. That system gave me a strong foundation. At the same time, I also began to notice limitations of this kind of arrangement as my career progressed. First, productivity was often valued more than clarity, and being visibly busy sometimes mattered more than whether the work itself was meaningful or efficient. Second, decisions around time were rarely flexible. Time off required justification, and energy was often expected to remain consistent even when that was not realistic long term. And lastly, I also observed that growth followed timelines that were not always tied to skill or contribution alone. Advancement sometimes depended on availability, maybe perception, and internal dynamics alongside your performance. Now, to be clear, none of this is inherently wrong. It is usually how many traditional systems are designed to function. For me, over time, that structure created friction rather than motivation. I felt that misalignment before I resigned, and even before I had the language to clearly name what it was. At that time, it showed up as restlessness, sometimes a quiet frustration, and a sense that something was not fully fitting anymore. That misalignment became clearer after I resigned. Losing that forced me to reassess how I wanted to work moving forward. Then came the discovery of the online world. Freelancing was not something I immediately pursued with confidence. It became an option I explored because I needed to rebuild stability in a different way. That moment in 2020 marked the beginning of a new chapter, even though I did not see it that way back then. What freelancing offered me was not freedom in the way that others often described it. To me, it offered responsibility and ownership. I had to decide how I worked to sustain my energy, how I communicated, and how I structured my days. That ownership was heavily demanding, but it also brought me clarity and fulfillment. So instead of always waiting for direction from my clients, I learned to anticipate, to be proactive, and start making decisions. Instead of staying within a fixed role, I learned to adapt based on what was actually needed. Freelancing forced me to understand my strengths quickly, but it also revealed my weaknesses without any cushioning or hierarchy to soften them. That level of honesty was uncomfortable at first, to the point that I started questioning if freelancing was really for me. But it also really clicked eventually. I was no longer evaluated by visibility or presence. I was assessed by outcomes, communication, and reliability. That shift felt more aligned with how I wanted to grow and take responsibility for my work. One of the biggest reasons I continue to choose freelancing is the control it gives me over my time and energy. In traditional roles, time is often treated as fixed and energy is assumed to be unlimited. In freelancing, I learned to work around my capacity instead of against it. I had to learn to design my days that supported focus rather than constant availability. This did not mean at all that I was working less all the time, but it meant working with intention, and this changed how sustainable work felt. Many people assume that traditional careers are safer, and I used to believe that too. But freelancing challenged that belief in a very personal way for me. I learned that security was not having about a single employer. It was about knowing I could adapt, continue to learn, and solve problems in different environments. When my income started coming from more than one place, loss no longer felt like everything collapsing at once. It still mattered, of course, but it became something I could respond to rather than panic over. I talk more about that experience of loss, especially losing clients, and what it taught me in another video as well. I will link that in the description if you want to explore that journey a bit deeper. So as my skills became transferable and usable across different projects and clients, change felt less threatening. I trusted myself more, even when things were uncertain. Freelancing taught me that stability doesn't only come from structure. It can also come from your capability and self-trust. Choosing freelancing meant learning to live with uncertainty. I remember there were still long periods that I was doubtful or second guessing myself. And there were months when my income fluctuated in ways that really tested my patience and confidence. No, I did not choose freelancing because it was easier. I chose it because the challenges felt honest and direct. Every outcome was tied to my decisions, both good and difficult ones. That level of accountability pushed me to grow faster and more intentionally than I ever did in a fixed role. Freelancing ultimately matched my values in a way that surprised me. I value autonomy and flexibility that is earned through trust and responsibility rather than requested or justified. I also value being able to adjust my work to meet different seasons of life without feeling like I have to constantly explain myself. I also care deeply about learning and growth, and freelancing keeps me engaged because no two projects ask the same thing of me. This path allowed me to build a career that can evolve over time instead of locking me into a single definition of success that no longer fits. Freelancing is not for everyone, and neither is a traditional career. The goal is not to choose what looks impressive on the outside, but to choose what you can sustain over time, physically, emotionally, and practically. What I shared in this video is my experience, and no two paths actually look the same. Sure, there may be similarities, but there is no single formula or right way to do this. If anything you heard today connected with you, I encourage you to treat it as information, not a standard. Let it be data, not something you use to judge or blame yourself, especially if you are in a season where progress feels slow or unclear. You know what? I can share all the lessons and experiences for you to be inspired, but I want you to remember that you are not behind and you are not missing something outside of yourself. But, and my only but, you are the miracle that you are waiting for. And I do not mean that lightly. The version of you that you keep imagining did not appear by accident. You did not think about that future life or that future self randomly. There is a reason it keeps showing up, and it is waiting for you to act on it. If you have reached the end of this video, thank you so much for staying with me. And if I had to guess, you might be in one of these seasons right now. Number one, you might be reflecting on whether there is another path for you outside of a traditional career, and you are quietly exploring your options. Or you might already be balancing a full-time job while freelancing on the side, and you are wondering whether freelancing can truly become something sustainable. Or you might already be a full-time freelancer like me, trying to stay grounded through days that can feel isolating at times. If that is you, hang in there. Freelancing can feel lonely before it feels connected. But once you find your people and your community, you will realize that you are not the only one navigating these questions and experiences. So comment which season you're in right now, or let me know if you are in a special season. Thank you again for listening. Keep learning and stay committed to the life that you are intentionally creating for yourself. I will see you in the next one. So subscribe if you haven't yet, and subscribe to my email community so you'll be the first to know once a new video is out. See ya!